For the first time in almost 4 years, the Louisville men's basketball team is back in the AP Top 25.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast on MLK Day. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show. And I want to take the time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. All you have to do, visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Louisville Cardinals are back in the AP Top 25 poll, number 25 in the rankings for the first time since 2021. Huge, significant development we'll discuss coming up here shortly. We'll also discuss two new 2026 football commitments, Dawson and Emoni Smith. And then to wrap the show up, we'll dive into the Monday Mailbag segment. I know we had the discussion on yesterday's show, and it had been a talking point over the past week or so. Ever since Louisville's winning streak continued to grow, it's currently sitting at 8. As we head into a pivotal matchup with SMU on Tuesday. But after defeating Syracuse and Virginia, many wondered, myself included, if this was going to finally be the week in which Louisville got back in the AP Top 25. And it was released early afternoon on Monday that the Cardinals did land in the top 25 at number 25, which we discussed all the scenarios on yesterday's show, all the things that Louisville needed to go right that had gone right. And it just kind of shows you that the Cardinals needed more help than we originally had thought. I mean, 22 of the 29 teams ahead of Louisville in the rankings this past week lost at least one game. Most in the top 25, some in the other receiving votes. Now, I know that a handful of these teams that lost doesn't really pertain to Louisville's case because they're ranked too high, but there were a good amount in the corridor from about 16 to 29 that we discussed. Well, it depends on how far they fall, that lost, and thinking to yourself, well, Louisville could jump this team, and they jumped a couple of teams. They also got jumped themselves. Two new teams in the rankings. Missouri ended up jumping the Cardinals, and West Virginia did as well. Missouri, number 22, West Virginia, number 23. Both of those teams have at least 240 points, if you will. Louisville has 125 sitting at number 25. They are 21 points higher than number 26 in the poll, which is Texas Tech, who has 108, and then almost 100 points more than the next team in Utah State, who has 38. So overall, really solid to see Louisville back in the poll. Like I mentioned, they had not been in the top 25 since January 25th, 2021. That is literally almost, like later this week will be 4 years to the day of that happening. January 25th, 4 years ago, when Louisville landed in the top 25 in that poll. They got in at number 25. It was not their first week in the polls, but they had just got in. And then they lost to Clemson, I think like 54-50, and they haven't been back since. And I think that you look back on this 4-year period, the 2020-2021 season wasn't all bad. I mean, you were arguably the first team out of the NCAA tournament. But after that, I mean, obviously the 21-22 season was a disaster. 22-23 was historically the worst season in program history. And then 23-24, I mean, marginally better at best with 8 wins. So being able to have this conversation now, it's awesome. And it's not the end-all be-all. Just because you're ranked in the grand scheme doesn't mean a ton. Like your tournament resume or your net ranking, like your ranking's not really going to come into that. I mean, the AP poll, we've seen teams in the AP poll get slighted in the NCAA tournament. Louisville in 2014, SMU a couple years ago. And I know that we are living in a different world than we did however long ago, but the merit remains the same. And I think that if you're looking for something and saying, well, what's this going to do for our tournament resume? No, not really. I think that honestly, that's not really the way to look at it. The way to look at it is, I believe it is a reflection of how good you are playing. Louisville has won 8 straight games, and they are this is the first week that a team with 5 losses has made the top 25. And there are currently 3 teams with 5 losses, Illinois, UConn, and Louisville. Louisville being the only new team to rise up with those 5 losses. So I thought it was also pretty interesting, and not to go too far off track, there was someone that had tweeted this out, and I forget who it was. Forgive me on that, but they put Louisville and UConn's resumes right next to each other, and the Cardinals had a better resume. I mean, the strength of schedule is right there. People will talk about the ACC. Mainly, I mean, there's a handful of Kentucky fans that, watch this show more than Louisville fans. And I think that that's pretty interesting. But hey, appreciate the click on the YouTube thumbnail, and appreciate you tuning in and letting us know your thoughts. But you see this narrative continue to build. Well, the ACC, it's a laughing stock. It's not that good, and I do think that is kind of funny. Number one, yes, SEC and Big 12 are better. They do have better teams. SEC, I mean, the tournament success or lack thereof, I feel like speaks for itself. ACC does really well in the tournament. They have for quite a long time. And I'm not here to argue that the ACC is on par right now with the SEC and the Big 10. Or I'm sorry, the Big 12. What I am arguing is that I think it's pretty rich that this is the argument we're making. Like, oh, the mighty SEC. I'm like, okay, we'll see what they do in March. But again, that's a tangent. Going off on a tangent. I don't want to make too much of an argument about it. I mean, it's clear that the SEC and Big 12 are better. I mean, Louisville has not a easy schedule, but not a terribly challenging schedule in the ACC. But they're handling business, and all they're doing is beating the teams in front of them, and they couldn't do it the past couple of years. And I'm not going to sit here and let this narrative that the ACC is just terrible diminish some of the significance of what Louisville's doing. The reality of the situation is that Pat Kelsey is doing a phenomenal job. Honestly, better than I thought he was going to do. And if you remember, before the season, I predicted Louisville was going to go 21-10. Those are pretty bullish expectations. Right now, you're sitting at 14-5, 2 games left in the month of January. And in this month of January, you've won 6 straight games. Well, 8 overall, but 6 through the month of January. You're continuing to prove that, hey, look, I was the guy. Maybe I wasn't the first choice, but I'm proving, each and every game that I was the right choice. So we talk about this, the pendulum swinging. We talk about Louisville's reputation getting built back up slowly but surely. And I think that a lot of things that happen are sort of just small things that factor into the equation that sort of serve as the foundation to lift this program back up to where it needs to be from a national prominence standpoint on the court and also off the court in terms of reputation and recognition. So, being able to beat Indiana and beat West Virginia in the battle for Atlantis on national television, I think that was key. To be able to continue to win games and rip off this 8-game winning streak, I think that it starts to turn heads nationally. You're starting to see people talk about Pat Kelsey more and more. And then now you get back into the top 25 and you start to get that sense of relevance again. Because let's be honest, Louisville hasn't been relevant in, at least 2 years. You could argue more because the back half of the 21-22 season was rough. So being able to get back to this standpoint, it's key. Again, it's not the end all be all because you do still have to handle business. You have to win games, and just because you make the top 25 doesn't mean you also can't exit the top 25 if you were to lose to SMU on Tuesday. So it's one of those things to where in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter much, but in the moment, it's just nice to see because of the drought that Louisville basketball has been in. And the team is starting to be rewarded for the level of play. I feel like with Louisville winning the last two games and against two teams that weren't great by any metric, but you win by double digits, and it's one of those situations to where, well, everyone lost, so we kind of have to put Louisville in by process of elimination, and you can see that, Missouri jumped over them. West Virginia jumped over them. West Virginia lost early last week, and then they beat Iowa State, and they moved up. So it just goes to show you, let whoever do whatever and just keep getting better. So Louisville does have a key matchup with SMU on the road on Tuesday. Right now, it could very well be, looking at the rest of the schedule, the only game at the moment in which they aren't favored to win. And we'll preview that matchup in its entirety on tomorrow's episode of the show, tomorrow morning's episode. But before we do that, obviously, I want to transition to the football side of things. We haven't talked a lot of high school recruiting in quite some time. There hasn't been much news. Haven't really talked about 2026 recruiting at all, but Louisville got 2 commits in that class this past week. We'll discuss when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. This message is brought to you by Prize Picks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prize Picks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prize Picks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, the lines aren't out yet, but next week you can bet that I'm going to go over on the Travis Kelsey receiving yards, and I'm also going to go over on the Jaden Daniels rushing yards. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit with Prize Picks Flex Play. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Run your game. Cardinal fans, want to take this time to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the show is free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Haven't talked a lot about high school recruiting on the football side in quite some time. There has been much news in that regard, especially in the 2026 class with, teams still focusing on the portal. But Louisville coming into this past week, they had 3 commitments. They had one from Brady Ballard, athlete from Indiana, John Adams, edge rusher from Florida, and Max Mers, interior offensive lineman from Kentucky. Louisville ended up getting another commitment from Kentucky, Sam Dawson from South Oldham High School, 6'4", 275 pounds. Doesn't currently have a ranking on the 24/7 Sports Composite. Has, according to this recruiting site, only one other offer, and that is an Eastern Kentucky offer. So it seems like Louisville went into this recruitment and said, hey, why don't you commit? Why don't you go ahead and commit, trying to get the verbal commitment before teams started to get involved. As a junior, made 11 starts, had 60 tackles, 8 tackles for a loss. In his career, he's had a whopping 196 tackles, 22 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks, 5 fumble recoveries, 1 interception, and 1 safety. listed as a defensive lineman. Pretty interested to see what his role is going to be at the next level. Like I said, 6'4", 275. For South Oldham, looks like we saw a couple different looks with the positions that he played. It seems like he played a little bit of the 5 tech in a 3-4 base. I'm not sure if he's going to project as a defensive end. I think maybe more so, on the interior of the 4-man front up front. But I think he has the versatility to play either the 3 tech or the 5 tech. A ton of strength there. I want to see, what that explosiveness looks like at the next level with any Kentucky guy. And this isn't really just about Kentucky. It's about any state that isn't really known for producing a ton of talent or having a state that has a ton of, competition, high level competition. You do wonder with any player from Kentucky, what's that level of competition like? Playing for South Oldham, teams in, the Louisville corridor. I mean, it's not the worst competition, of course. I do want to see how he would, fare, playing in the ACC, and if he's able to pick up some more offers. So I can see the skill set and the upside that, Coach Brom and company are looking for. It's just a matter of time to see if he's going to be able to, just be able to get some playing time at Louisville. He committed back on the 16th, which was, I think, what was the 16th? Was the 16th Wednesday? Oh no, the 16th was Thursday. They got a commitment also on Saturday. This one coming from Emoni Smith, safety / athlete / do-it-all player for Westland High School in Galloway, Ohio. For those that don't know where that is, it is west of the city of Columbus. So I would imagine that is Buckeye country up there in Columbus, Ohio. Emoni Smith is ranked. He's ranked as the 723rd best player, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, has an 0.836 ranking. He's ranked as the 57th best safety. Gosh, I can't read right now. 57th best safety, 38th best player in the state of Ohio. 6'1", 175 pounds. Has a little bit more Power 5 interest. Has offers from Kentucky, Michigan State, Purdue, West Virginia. It seems like Illinois was trying to get involved. He made an unofficial visit to Penn State back in November. So a ton of Big Ten, interest, a lot of Midwest interest. I think that this is a pretty interesting commitment for Louisville because of the versatility here. Emoni Smith played essentially everywhere for his high school, not only on the defensive side, but also played wide receiver, safety, cornerback on the boundary, cornerback in the slot, outside linebacker, you name it. He's got a good amount of lateral quickness for his size, hard-hitting defensive back, does a really good job at high pointing the football, being 6'1". I wonder, being 175 pounds, if, they're going to try to put him in that outside linebacker role. I think personally for me, he's probably a card, that outside linebacker in the box. I think he could also be a traditional safety out in center field. But don't forget, he also played cornerback at one point. For those recruiting personnel listening to this, those that follow Louisville recruiting, gives me like a low-key Derek Edwards vibes, if you remember that name in the 2021 class. Now, Edwards was only about 5'10", 5'11", and Emoni Smith has more height. But I compare the two because they were used in so many different ways for their high school team that coming to Louisville, I know he's listed as a safety, but we know that Louisville has transitioned safeties to linebackers over the past couple of years. TJ Quinn, Jalen Alderman, Stanquan Clark did that while he was in high school. But the list goes on. Antonio Watts was in that conversation, Ben Perry. So it's just a matter of, okay, do you think that his skill set is going to translate better as a guy in the card spot, or maybe as a true safety, or as a cornerback? The good thing is that you have the versatility to play in a couple of different spots. So even if the place you put him in isn't the best for him long term, maybe an injury happens somewhere and you have to shift him over. I think that skill set is extremely valuable to have, and it's one of those things to where we believe in the talent, so we're going to go ahead and take the commitment, but we won't really figure out. We might have an idea of where we would like to play him, but we might not figure things out until he steps foot on campus and we can see him work with the defensive unit. So Sam Dawson, Emoni Smith, both committing to Louisville. The Cardinals currently have 5 players committed in the 2026 class. The class is very early ranked as the 42nd best class in the country. Obviously, it is extremely, extremely early. So I would love to get some more 2026 recruiting news as we head into sort of that lull in football news and we get into more of the basketball season. So when we come back, we got some great questions surrounding the basketball side, both men's and women's basketball, in this week's edition of the weekly mailbag. We'll answer those questions, or attempt to, when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is what got me hooked. It's easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps everything exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. I hit 2 parlays on Sunday. One was a pretty good parlay for the Rams-Eagles game. And then I also did a little ladder challenge and doubled my money on an NBA bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Into the final segment of this Monday edition of the show. A couple of great questions on this week's Monday mailbag. We haven't had a ton of mailbags on Monday, but it's really just a matter of whenever we can fit them in. And I don't want to just not do them over the course of the week, because you all have had some questions. I know we haven't talked a lot about the women's basketball side of things. They were on a winning streak before this past game. They lost a close game 70-65 to Virginia Tech, snapping the Cardinals' winning streak. First question is, what is your overall take on how the women's basketball season has gone? The Cardinals are 13-6. They're 6-2 in conference play, 1.5 games out of first place Notre Dame. You look at those 6 losses: UCLA, Kentucky, Oklahoma, UConn, NC State, Virginia Tech. Before Virginia Tech, when Louisville lost the 5 games previous, all the teams they played were ranked. Now, this Louisville team isn't the thing about it is, just like, for reference points, you're talking about Final Four contending teams, and right now I don't think that Louisville is a Final Four contender. But when you consider the youth that they have on the team, the amount of true freshmen that they have in, you knew it was going to take some time for this team to gel, and they've been doing that. Like, they've been getting better. They had the blowout win against Memphis. I mean, in that 7-game winning streak, only 2 of the wins were by single digits. One of them was at Wake Forest, where they had a player shoot like 60% from the field. Actually, Pittsburgh, they had 3 that were single digits. They won at Pittsburgh, and then they also beat Georgia Tech, who was a ranked team. So I mean, it's not ideal in the sense of, you've come to expect Jeff Walz's team to contend for Final Fours every year, but I think you're building a good foundation with the freshman class that you have brought in. So I'm excited for the future for this team. I know that there have been some bumps along the road, which is to be expected. But I look for this team to finish out the month of January strong and look to, make some noise in the month of February. So we'll see how Jeff Walls' team does. The men's basketball team has won 8 straight games. They're at 14 wins. I know you predicted 21. Do you think it's time to change that prediction? That's a good question. That's a really good question. Louisville has 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They've got 12 games left. The Cardinals would need to go 7-5 in their last 12 to get to 21-10. And I know you have more road games in the month of February, but the quality of team that you're playing is lower, and Louisville seems to play better on the road, which is pretty neat. I do think at this point, put it this way, I'm not going to change it yet, and that's not an indication that I don't feel like Louisville can win more than 21 games. I just feel like, there's still a good amount of games left. I don't want to say like 23 or 24 wins, and then, maybe Louisville drops a couple that they shouldn't. I'm just going to still keep it at 21 wins. I will say, though, I will change that record prediction if they beat both SMU and Wake Forest. I will do that because at that point they would be 16-5 with 10 games remaining, and then you're feeling pretty good. And then you're feeling good about going into February. So currently, it just is what it is. I'm not going to change it currently. With how many different leading scorers the Cardinals have had over this winning streak, you look at the rest of the season, and which player do you think will lead the Cardinals in scoring for the most games? That's tough. That's a really good question. That is a really good question. And it's pretty close. You look, Terrence Edwards has had multiple games, Chucky Hepburn, Rain Smith. This is a good one. Shout out to this question, man. This is a really good question. I'm gonna go Rain Smith. I feel like Rain is just shooting the ball at an extremely high level. He's getting to the free throw line. Louisville designs a lot of the offense to get him open looks. And I just think that with the way he's been shooting, I think that momentum is going to just carry over. And I'm going to go with Rain Smith here. I would think potentially Chucky Hepburn, but Chucky's shooting numbers haven't been the greatest as of late. He's doing pretty good at the free throw line, but the numbers efficiency-wise hasn't been great of late. And I think that I think it's gonna be Rain. That'd be awesome to see because I feel like no one expected this coming into the season. So predict Louisville's next loss. Put me on the spot. That's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. Because realistically, I think Louisville's gonna beat SMU and Wake Forest, but if they don't lose to either of those two teams, I think they're gonna beat Georgia Tech, beat Boston College, beat Miami. I'm gonna say something random because I don't think they're gonna win every single game of the rest of the year. I'm gonna say at NC State would be for me. It wouldn't surprise me if they did lose at SMU because SMU is a good team. Wake Forest is a good team. So if they lose either of those two games, it's not going to surprise me. I think with the way that Louisville's playing, I'd probably say Louisville's going to win those two, but who knows? I'm predicting it, I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question. I'm going to say it's just going to be a random game. I feel like I'm going to say that Louisville's going to lose a game that they shouldn't have, and the loss is going to come to a team that no one saw coming. So that is going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. We will be right back here tomorrow previewing the Tuesday night matchup down in Dallas against SMU. Everyone have a great day. Stay warm. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Go Cards.